Hey, all right, good morning, gang. As you can tell, I'm obviously not here today. Mr. Ferguson will fearlessly lead you through a nice document-based activity where you're going to be taking a look at some primary source documents and some maps as we investigate a little bit deeper into Manifest Destiny. But first, I'd invite you to take a look at the cartoon. I'm a firm believer that Calvin and Hobbes really can help explain everything. So I'll just kind of let you take a moment to sink in, to let this sink in. And so, yeah, don't you hate it when your boogers freeze? I certainly do. And if you stepped outside today and did the big, you probably felt a little bit of the freezing inside. Frozen boogers is certainly something that only people in the north can really relate to. I don't think many people down in Florida or Texas would fully understand the concept of frozen boogers, but I digress. All right, so again, we've been looking at manifest destiny. Manifest means clear or obvious. Duh. Destiny is like your future, your fate. It's going to happen, right? So another way of thinking about manifest destiny is that we were clearly going to have a future where we spread across the continent. Remember, manifest destiny can be defined as that belief that America would someday spread from sea to, that's right, shining sea, from east to, that's right, west, that we would spread across the continent. And that's really what we've been looking at. So we're going to do a quick review. Here's that painting, American Progress, 1872 by John Gast. We looked at this at the preview of our unit about a week and a half ago. And I just want you to take a moment, go ahead and pause the video in just a second right now. And I just want you to kind of study, jot down on a sheet of paper. You should have a blank sheet somewhere. And again, jot down a couple of things that you see, and it should make a little bit more sense now that we've looked at the unit, but jot down a few things. Go ahead and press pause right now. Okay, you should have jotted down a few things and restarted me. And basically, again, the big thing that we all see is this lady right here, this giant woman floating above the clouds and floating above the settlers. And what do we think that she symbolizes? So why don't you just go ahead and have a quick discussion and pause me again about what this woman potentially symbolizes. Go ahead and pause. Okay, I'm assuming you had a good discussion, and we do talk about the fact that she basically symbolizes the country, right? She symbolizes the nation moving west. So we're just going to kind of take a look at a couple of maps here now, and as we go ahead, let's take a look at this map right now. This is a map of the United States in 1872. If we look back, it's the same year that John Gast painted American Progress. So again, looking ahead here, map of the United States in 1872. We can see by this time the country literally stretched from sea to, that's right, shining sea, east to west. Not everything in here was a state at this time, but they were all at least American territories, right? For example, Arizona was not a state in 1872, it was just a territory. But all of this land was controlled by the country here. Keep in mind, this is after the Louisiana Purchase in 1803. This is after our war with Mexico. This is after the annexation of Texas. This is after all of those big events. Westward expansion was done in 1872. So if we look back at this painting, American Progress by John Gast, this painting does not symbolize the future, but it's more of a celebration of what happened. It's more of a celebration of the accomplishments in 1872, right? The fact that it's painted in 1872 after expansion is complete really tells us a lot about how Americans viewed manifest destiny and about how we viewed our expansion. So again, this is more of a celebration. So that's 1872, but let's take a step back. Here's 1816. This is a map of the United States. It's an electoral college map showing James Monroe. We don't need to necessarily worry about that. And the Federalist, Rufus King, that's right, Clocky, Rufus, ran for president. But don't get too hung up on the voting here, but just take a look at the map, right? This is a map in 1816 that shows the United States. As you can see, the green and the reddish-brownish areas here, those are actual states, these reddish areas. These brown areas are territories, right? So in 1816, this is essentially what the country looked like. This is now called the Missouri Territory. It was part of the Louisiana Purchase, but Louisiana becomes a state, and it's now called the Missouri Territory, the Illinois Territory, where we live. But again, you can see the country has far from spreading, right? No Florida, no Texas, and then if we were to go further out, no California, no Oregon, no Washington, none of those things, right? So this is how the country actually existed in 1816. And so just take a good look at this map and really study how this country looks at 1816, because we're about to look at a very different map from 1816. Now we take a look at this map. This map is painted by a man named John Mellish in 1816. Very similar, right? It still shows the states. If we look back and forth, it still shows the states as they exist. But we noticed that Mellish, he titles this Map of the United States. And in John Mellish's Map of the United States, he draws the whole thing, all of this land out here. And notice there aren't even any borders that really show the differences, right? There aren't any borders showing, oh, the Louisiana Purchase cuts off here. Oh, this is the Oregon Territory. Oh, this is owned by Mexico. In 1816, right, John Mellish is drawing a map of the United States that shows everything from sea to shining sea. This is, again, 1816, Florida is not ours. Texas is not ours. The Mexican Cession is not ours. Oregon is not ours. Yet, John Mellish paints a map of the United States in 1860 covering everything. My question to you for a little bit of discussion, that you're going to go ahead and pause and have a discussion, is why do you think he draws a map in 1816 before any of these territories are ours? Why does he draw a map showing the United States like this? So just go ahead and pause and have a little discussion on that. All right, welcome back. Not quite sure what your discussions were, but here we're going to take a look and we're going to get John Mellish's explanation. If you were to say, hey, Mr. Mellish, why'd you draw a map of the United States that included all these other territories that weren't ours? Here's what he would have said, and what he did say. To present the country this way was desirable. The map shows at a glance the whole extent of the United States territory from sea to sea. In tracing the probable expansion of the human race from east to west, the mind finds an agreeable resting place on its western limits. The view is complete and leaves nothing to be wished for. It also adds to the beauty and the symmetry of the map, right? So he is basically saying it's going to happen, right? He's saying we're going to keep expanding west, and naturally it will fall into our hands, even though, right, ignoring the fact that there are other groups and other countries that lay claim to that land. He's saying, you know what? Sure, that might be true, but we are going to continue to expand, right? Probable, meaning it'll probably happen. Expansion, meaning that it's probably going to happen as is. All right, so what's going to happen now is you're going to be getting a few different documents now that we've got this little primer, this little background information on Mellish. You're going to take a look at his map, and there are going to be some questions on there for you to kind of answer individually. And then there are going to be some discussion questions that Mr. Ferguson is going to be in. And by the end of this whole little activity, what you are going to do is you are going to answer the central historical question, which essentially is, how did Americans justify expansion? Our essential question for the chapter is, how justifiable was it? Was it done for a good reason? Did we have just cause? Was it a good thing or not? And we've answered that question for each individual territory about how justifiable it was. So now we're looking at a slightly different question again. In this one, the central historical question is, how justifiable was expansion? Or I'm sorry, not how justifiable was it, but how did Americans justify expansion? So you're going to be looking at this map. You're also going to be looking at John O'Sullivan, the man who coined the phrase manifest destiny, and we're going to see how Americans justified it. And we will discuss it tomorrow. So I'll see you here tomorrow. Take care and watch out for those frozen boogers. Peace.